Okay, so now we have our mask primed, and I let this dry for about a day and let it off gas and stuff before I start painting. I have two of them ready to paint because I want to show you guys how to do one with a paintbrush and one with an airbrush, because I know not everybody has an airbrush, so I'm going to show you how to do both. And for the airbrush, the colors that I'm going to be using, I have the primary colors, so I have red, yellow, and blue. And these are the ones that just came with my airbrush. And then I have Craytex, I have black and white, and this is going to help with our shadows and highlights. And I also have the green and the brown, and these are both Craytex as well. So the airbrush I'm going to be using is the Iwata Eclipse HPCS. And I love this thing already. I'm pretty new at airbrushing still, so I'm not going to go over the basics of how to airbrush in this video. I'm just going to kind of show you guys my technique on how I did it. So if you don't already know the basics, I'd watch a beginner video first. Just like the basics of airbrushing. Yeah, so this is just my technique. This is how I'm going to do it on this mask. So yeah, I think we're going to start with the airbrush first, and then I'll show you with the paintbrush. Okay, so I'm going to start with my base color, which is going to be a pretty dark, almost black, but I'm going to mix a little bit of brown in with it. Because sometimes black is just a little too harsh or not realistic. So if I kind of just like bring a little bit of brown in there, I feel it looks better. And I'm just testing a little bit of it out on my mask before I start spraying, make sure it's kind of the color I want, which that looks good, so I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to paint the entire brown part with that darkest color. And I did decide, like, you'll see me do this a lot, where I'll cool down my shadows and warm up my highlights. So these are my shadows, so I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there just to cool them down a little bit, and this is going to help with some contrast. And I did notice I got a little run there, it's a bit watery, so I'm just blowing it with straight air until it's dry, and then I'm going to do a layer over top. Okay, now I'm going in with a lighter brown shade, and I'm going to try to hit the high points. I'm going to try not to cover up my crevices or my deepest shadows too much, but I'm going to try to give this some dimension. So I did switch cameras at this point, so hopefully you can see a little better what I'm doing. So I have my high points with that lighter brown, and I tried not to knock out too many of my shadows. So you can see that this is starting to make our wood grain really pop. And if we were to just do a solid brown across the whole thing, you're going to lose a lot of that dimension and contrast that you get by taking your time and painting your shadows and your midtones and your highlights in. So I decided I want to go a little bit warmer for my highlights. So I'm mixing more of a reddish brown. So I believe I used my base brown color for that, and I mixed in a little bit of red. And I decided it's a little too red still, so I'm mixing some more of my base brown in just to tone it down a little bit. Get something kind of in between what I had before and that really red that I just had. And I want the whole mask to have this red tint, so I'm holding further back, and I'm just kind of misting this whole thing with the reddish brown to try to warm it up a little bit, because I think I started a little too cool. And now that the whole thing's got a little bit of a red tint, I'm going to mix my highlights. So I'm taking that reddish tint that I had, and I'm adding a bit of white, and this is the easiest way to lighten it up. And I did want to warm it up a little bit, make it a little more like a yellow or like an orangish brown color. Yeah, so it's almost like a tan color right now, because if you look at reference pictures of a Deku mask, the nose part is more of like a yellowish than a brown. So I'm just going to hit the nose with this. And I decided it needed cooled down just a little bit, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue. And now I'm going in and I'm hitting my highest points, my highlights. And I'm going to try to be more careful. I don't want to destroy the detail that I've already created. So I'm going to try to be really careful where I'm aiming this and try to just get the high points and not destroy those mid-tones or shadows too much. And when I'm painting, I try to do at least 3 shades of any color I'm working with. So I'll have my shadows, my mid-tones, and my highlights. And the more you kind of add, the more dimension you're going to get. So I'm trying not to lose detail. So here you can see I still have that dark brown, I have some reds in there, I have tan in there. This is really going to give it dimension and make it pop and make it interesting. Okay, now I'm mixing some more of that really dark shade that we had in the very beginning. I did knock out a lot of my shadows when I put in my mid-tones and highlights, and that's okay, I expected that to happen. So I'm going back in and I'm just going to try to deepen those shadows a bit more. Be really careful not to destroy your highlights and mid-tones that you've already put in. If you do, it's okay, you just might need more layers, you might have to go back in. Which, like I said, that's okay, it gives it makes it more interesting, it gives it more dimension the more layers you have, at least in my opinion. Okay, so I really like how that's looking, and now I'm going to go in and do where my natural shadows would fall. So this is usually going to be where 2 parts meet, or where light might not be able to hit as easy, creases and things like that. So when you look at a reference picture of the mask, it does have more dark on the top where the leaves are at, and it fades into a brown. And I'm also going under the nose a little bit, because if light was hitting it straight on, the nose flares out a little, it's going to cast a shadow. So we're going to bring in that shadow. Okay, that is looking cute. So I'm going to move on to my leaves now. And before we start painting our leaves, we want to mask it off, the part we've already painted. So I'm just using some masking tape, and if you wanted to be extra cautious, tape off more than I did, but I'm me and lazy, I don't know. The masking tape also has the potential to pull off some of the paint, so you want to be careful when using it and get rid of some of its sticky, and the way I like to do this is I'll stick the tape to my pants and pull it off a few times before I stick it to my paint. So this time I'm starting with almost more of like a mid-tone green. So I believe this is just straight green what I had, and I'm going to do the entire leaf part this solid color. I'm just going to get a base color down to work on top of. I'm mixing my shadows now. So that's going to be mostly green. I'm going to do a little bit of blue to cool it down because I like cooler shadows. And this is going to be cool. It's almost going to tint it towards a teal color, but not quite. Almost like a green with a little bit of blue. I like it. And then I'm going to do just a tiny bit of black to darken it up a little bit. And I'm going to avoid the high parts of my leaves, and I'm just going to go between kind of where the crevices are at, or the deeper parts that might not get as much light. Time for my highlights, so I'm starting with that base green color, and I'm adding in some yellow. It's going to make it like a bright yellowy green. It's going to be pretty. And I'm mixing in some white because it needs to be lighter. And I'm just hitting my raised points with this. I'm going to try not to destroy the shadows that I've already done. For the eyes, you can see that I taped them into the position that I want them, and I'm using some masking tape that I cut into the shape of the eye, and I'm going to mask off the part that I want to be the brightest yellow, and I'm popping these out, and that's going to help protect that yellow when I start putting in my orange and reds and things. So I'm going to start off with an orange, which is a combination of yellow and red. If you have an orange, you can use that. I don't, so we're mixing one. And we're going to go very, very light. We're kind of holding far back. We're not giving a lot of flow to our airbrush. More air than paint. And I'm going to slowly build this up, working on the outside and bringing the paint in, and I'm going to try to blend it into that yellow color. And at this point I'm pulling my tape off, and I'm going to try to blend out that line that I have. Oranges are done. I'm going to go in with some red, and this is going just on the outside. We're not going to pull it in too far, but this is really going to help make that yellow pop because we're giving it contrast. We have our highlight yellow, our mid-tone orange, and our shadow red. To blend out that line just a little bit more, I'm going in with straight yellow, and I'm just hitting where the yellow and the orange meet. Try not to cover too much of your yellow because it's easier for light to pass through the plastic when there isn't paint on top of it, which we are putting LEDs in these. So you want the light to pass through the yellow more than the outsides, and if you cover the entire yellow part with yellow paint, less light passes through the paint. After taking a break and coming back, I decided that the nose color wasn't quite what I wanted, so we're going to try to mix a tannish color. I felt that this was too dull or green. It wasn't like bright, yellowy, tannish orange as I wanted it. So we're going to work on mixing something a little different. We're going to try to make it look better. So if you didn't watch my priming video, I went over how to mix your own brown, which is a combination of your primary colors. So that's why you see me mixing red, yellow, and blue together. And I'm just working to get the color I want. So this is going to be almost like you're mixing an orange, but you're putting a little bit of blue in there to cool it down because you don't want it straight orange, and then a bit of white in there to lighten it up. And this is getting closer to what I want, but it's still a little too yellow. I want it more on the tan side. So I'm adding red, which is going to push it towards more of an orange than yellow. And that is looking better. I'm going to take the color I already have in there and make it just a little bit darker because we did wipe out our shadows a bit, so we're going to go in and try to put our shadows back in and darken the center of the nose a bit more too. Okay, I'm liking that. That is looking good. I'm just popping the eye in real quick to make sure everything's cohesive, works together well, and looks good with the eyes in, which it does. So now we can add some eyes. I didn't record this part, but I did take it outside when I was done and sprayed it with clear spray paint. And I do this to help protect the paint and make sure it can't chip. It also gives it a nice finish. So I started off with a semi-gloss and decided I liked matte better, so I did matte over top the semi-gloss. Next time I would probably just go in with matte, but I think it still turned out pretty good. So that's it for this video. If you would like to see how I do the LEDs in the eyes, make sure to check out that video. When it's up, I'll try to remember to come back and put a link in the description of this video. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please give me a like. That would be awesome. Make me happy. Yeah.